The problem is those are everyone, aren't they? Wilder and Fury are the ones that he needs to have. But look, there are some good points to take away, Gareth, from that interview. I think the first point is AJ will, it looks like, have a fight in December. He is in Austin, Texas now. He was there for the F1. He's going to be linking up with Derek James again. And 3 times in 9 months for AJ is incredible. I mean, we're going back to AJ of 2012, 13, 14. He doesn't fight 3 times in 9 months. In fact, he fights 3 times in 4 years. So I like the fact that it's active. Yes, it might not be the big names in the division, but I like the fact it's active. It's 3 fight camps with Derek James, and it should then, I think, propel him to a good 2024.
Yeah, and if I don't know if I said this to you last week, but I mean, if I was speaking promotionally, which might not be to the delight of all the fans out there, speaking promotionally, if I was Eddie Hearn, I'd just keep Anthony Joshua winning, and I'd keep Anthony Joshua winning till Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk have fought, because there's still an enormous fight for him with Tyson Fury, which will still generate, I think, massive interest in the UK, even though, in a sense, Anthony Joshua's stock kind of fell when he lost twice successively to Alexander Usyk. That's I think, if I'm thinking it, they'll have thought it. You know, I don't know if we're going to hear it, but I think the idea of Joshua coming out openly and saying, I wouldn't mind being on the undercard of Fury and Usyk, I like the sound of that. I like the way that's building. So there's 5 or 6 heavyweight fights that need to happen. And if Joshua and Hearn put their kind of promotional rivalries to one side, I think there's space in, you know, where I am now, in space where Joshua can fit in. I quite like the fact that he's not being egotistical and says he would fight on the undercard of Fury and Usyk. If it was Wilder, amazing, because, you know, you get the 2 winners and the 2 losers fighting of those 2 fights. But I love his appetite, like you've just said, for being busy. And I admire the fact that he's a made man, and yet he's still got that drive in him to want to get better, to want to continue fighting, because he certainly doesn't need to.
No, of course he doesn't. I mean, the bank is okay. The bailiffs are not at his door. And I like what you said as well. Warren and Hearn need to work with each other. I think we all saw the demise of Showtime, and who would have thought that would have happened? And it shows when promoters don't work with each other, it causes problems. If big fights can be made, everyone can eat, everyone can make some money. Why not do it? And you're right. AJ did speak to Martin Brundle on the F1, didn't he, the other day, talking about the fact that he's willing to fight on the undercard because he knows it's a big one. I mean, that's a Super Bowl. That is. I mean, Fury, Usyk, and AJ, you don't even need no more undercard fights. Just that 4. That's it. That's all you need. Those 4 guys going at each other, and you're talking pay-per-view records being done. I think it's highly unlikely, because you could do them on separate weekends and both of them would do over 1 million pay-per-view buys. But, I mean, it could happen. It really could happen. Very much, I think, a UFC approach this. He sounds like Dana White there. And I think, you know, I know he's a big fan of the way Dana White and the UFC operate. And it's kind of like that. We think you're ready for this fight. We're going to make this fight. And look, it's not that easy with boxing. I think there are more things to be said to it. But I do feel like some fighters, especially, again, looking over towards America, have been overpaid for years, taking the fights we don't want to see. As fight fans, in order to grow this sport, we need to see the big fights happen more often than not. And I think it's been the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, you can't disagree with what he's saying there. You want to see the best fight the best as soon as we can see them fight the best. I like the fact that his caveat is that you have to allow the process that fighters go through when they're growing, because it is a process in terms of levels. You step up, don't you? And that's the way boxing works. You know, you mentioned the UFC. The UFC has a roster. I remember when they used to cut fighters if they lost 2 or 3 in a row.
Yeah.
But they don't anymore as well. So commercial value is really important. All those factors, you know, that's his mindset working there. That's the way every promoter's mindset works, because you build towards the big fights. That's how boxing works. But the attitude of that is right. And maybe heralded, you know, we were both up there at Misfits. Was that last weekend, the weekend before last?
Mm.
And you did think,
He,
look at
he
this.
was there as well, watching it.
And he was there with his daughter, yeah,
Mm.
exactly. You know, I spoke to him that night for talkSPORT, and you know, one of those things is the build up was amazing or different, very WWE, and however you want to criticize it or enjoy it or whatever it was. And it caused a lot of drama. But what was the product like in the ring? And we spoke about it last week. I found myself really going over it and kind of for the first time really starting to think, right, what should they do? What need they to do? Can you combine exciting young fighters on one of those cards when you have got massive names on the top or even influencers? There's so many, you know, it's a very creative industry. It's a very creative sport. And I think the matchmaking is key. You know, and I mean, you know, we just talked about it earlier. You look at last weekend, we kind of were able to predict the way that Jack Catterall and Linares was going to go because we know the sport. And I think, you know, there's in this day and age, you know, with social media and fans don't want the wool pulled over their eyes.
Mm.
So, you know, he's right. He's right in what he's saying. And if we're reaching for that, then that's great. But when you've got promotional rivalries and broadcast rivalries, my experience is, and it's historical fact, you only get all the broadcasters and all the promoters coming together for
Mm.
very big fights when they all do it together, and that be that a Mike Tyson event or a
Okay.
Mayweather Pacquiao. So it all comes down to the finances in the end.